everybody, and welcome to Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast where we talk all things from the solo years and, of course, occasionally, well, maybe more than occasionally, from the Beatles years as well. You may notice that things look a little different tonight. And maybe judging from my background here, it isn't tonight. And instead, and this is not a fake background either. This is my backyard. We are actually recording this because we have a very special guest joining us, and because of the the time difference, we decided to record this in advance. So if you're watching this on Monday night, August 22nd, we are not live, but we are going to be myself and my co-hosts are going to be in the comments when this premieres at the usual time, and so we'll be as much as we can watching it with you, and we'll be commenting and everything. So feel free to leave comments, and of course, if you're watching this on the replay, keep leaving comments, questions, and so forth. So this is going to be a very special show for many reasons. So before we get to that, let me introduce myself, my friends and co-hosts, and our very special guest tonight. My name is Kit O'Toole. I am the author of Songs We Were Singing, Guided Tours Through the Beatles' Lesser Known Tracks, Michael Jackson FAQ, All That's Left to Know About the King of Pop, and I am the co-editor, along with our good friend Ken Womack, Fandom in the Beatles, the act you've known for all these years. Thank you for the support. And so next up, we have the host of the very popular YouTube channel, Mean Mr. Mayo. He has videos on everything from his adventures in collecting Beatles in solo vinyl, memorabilia, his great adventures also at his local record store with a great cast of characters, his show called Fab Gab, and a more than healthy dose of comedy. Great stuff. But Joe Mayo. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Kit. Thank you for that nice introduction. And hello, Ken. Hello, Tom. And welcome, Owen.
Hello.
All right. Next up, he is the co-host of the also very popular videocast / podcast Two Legs, which is all about the Paul McCartney years. And they are just incredibly busy. In addition to doing their show, they also have chats. They also put up videos of their adventures in collecting, mainly vinyl, and I mean, they are just producing content like crazy, and so there's always something new to find on their channel. So say hello to Tom Hunyadi. Hello, Tom.
Hello, kids. Joe, Ken, good to see you guys, and special guest. It's good to see you once again, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other in the future.
Special guest.
You can count on it.
And next up, he is, of course, a mainstay in the Beatles community. He's been on the air for 40 years, just amazing, celebrating his 40th year. Yes, I need to take a screenshot of that later. Expression. He is, of course, the host of the syndicated radio show Every Little Thing, where he plays just that, every little thing, from the Beatles and solo years, usually revolving, no pun intended, around a single theme, and it's always something very creative. And he is also the co-host of the extremely popular podcast Things We Said Today. As I always say, how popular? Just ask Peter Jackson. And and as if that weren't enough, in addition to this show, he has a great YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio, which just passed 1,000 subscribers.
Yes.
So congratulations, Ken.
Thank you to everyone subscribing to my channel, and of course, subscribers to this show.
Indeed. Indeed. So welcome, Ken Michaels. Hello, Ken.
Hey, Kit. Hey, Joe, Tom, and special guest.
I should have said special guest. Welcome, special guest.
Yeah, that's all right. So I think it's about time we reveal the special guest. Really thrilled to have him. He's coming all the way from Ireland for this show. We really appreciate it. He is the author of this particular book right here, George Harrison in the 1970s. Books up, everybody.
Well, at least you know 4 of us have the book.
Yeah. He is also the author of U2 on Track, all about of course, the music of the band we also all know and love. He has also published on a variety of sites and magazines, Record Collector, Culture Sonar, and hey, we're Culture Sonar buddies. I published there as well. Digital Fix and the Playlist, and he's interviewed everyone from Brian May to Stuart Copeland and Lawrence Juber.
Wow.
I'm turning green with jealousy right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Eoghan Lyng. Eoghan, thank you for being on the show.
I take one slight umbrage. You forgot about the part where I said I wrote a piece for Far Out magazine saying why Wings were a better band than the Beatles. Let's get the boxing gloves on.
Yeah, let's get started. Oh boy.
Ready to say that, Kit?
I was debating whether to do it or not.
There were some fans out there that would agree, I'll bet.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I should have said that, but
it's all about Paul for a lot of people.
Yes, it is. That's very true. That's very true. But Eoghan, we are so thrilled to have you here tonight, and we are dying to talk about the book. Before we get to that, as always, let's talk about the news. Ken, what have you got for us?
Okay, this is not as lengthy as most of my Beatle news guests have been. Some people are saying, yay. Anyway, we'll start with actually the very sad news on the passing of John Eastman, who was Paul McCartney's brother-in-law and Linda McCartney's brother. Of course, we all know that towards the end of the Beatles, there was a big war that went on within the group where John, George, and Ringo were now inclined to be their business manager, and Paul wanted the Eastman family to represent the group. As it turns out, John Eastman was a lot more to Paul McCartney than just handling management. He was a really good friend and very close to Paul through the years. And Paul issued a statement, "My dear brother-in-law, John Eastman, has passed away. Having known each other for over 50 years, it is an extremely sad time for me and our family. John was a great man, one of the nicest and smartest people I have had the good luck to have known in my life. Not only did he help me massively in my business dealings as my lawyer, but as a friend, he was hard to beat. His sense of humor always shone through in everything he did, and his devotion to his family was supreme. We had so many fun times together through the years, but when the time came to be serious, he was unbeatable. There is so much more that can be said of his incredible qualities, but words can hardly describe his passion for life and our affection for this amazing man. He will be sorely missed, but always held dear in the hearts of those of us who knew and loved him. See you, Johnny. Love, Paul." Johnny, 83. And I will turn your attention, if you could, watch the most recent things we said today, because Alan Cozen wrote a really nice piece on John Eastman on our Facebook page, and he expanded on that, how important John Eastman really was. When Paul had to re-sign with CBS Records, John Eastman was behind that.
Right.
Re-signing with Capitol Records, John Eastman was there. For anything in the business, John was there. And whereas you may always hear the name Lee Eastman, who of course the McCartneys had the greatest affection and respect for, John Eastman was the one who did most of the representing for Paul through the years. And when it came time to trying to handle the Beatles there, Lee wanted John to do it because John was a younger guy, closer in age to the Beatles. So really strong bond right there between the Eastmans, of course, and the McCartney family. So very sad to hear that. Okay, one other passing we'll talk about momentarily. Roger Freeman of Showbiz 411 is reporting that the new release for the DVD and Blu-ray for the Beatles documentary Get Back, in terms of sales, has been a dud. According to his stats, the DVD has sold almost 13,000 copies, while the Blu-ray has sold almost 32,000 copies. Total sales have come to just $1.6 million. Despite this being such a landmark documentary with glowing reviews after having been shown on Disney Plus, and Paul McCartney promoting it on his tour with the performance of I've Got a Feeling from the rooftop concert with he and his band playing it live, the sales have been extremely disappointing. Even Ringo has promoted the release online by posting a photo of his toes with the DVD next to his toes. He's wearing sandals and all, but
That's why the sales fell.
I don't know if that was a smart move on Ringo's part, but
Didn't he
yeah.
say something like "come together" or something like
Oh.
that?
Oh,
It doesn't surprise me that this didn't do that well. I mean, it does, but it doesn't, because a lot of people said, "Oh, I'm not going to buy this. I'm just going to watch it on." He left it on the streaming. I can get it on streaming, and there's no bonus feature or or extra footage or anything on it. So why buy it? A lot of people said, and I'll wait until something comes out. They said, that has extras on it. Well, that's not going to happen if you don't support this one, because if they feel there's no interest out there. Disney is not known, for wanting to put out extended cuts, director's cuts, or extra footage. That they have a reputation for not wanting to do that.
Right.
So the
But
fans
then,
didn't show enough interest.
right. But then, in a way though, we're also telling them, look, we're not going to continue this double dipping thing that, a lot of companies like to do, right? They'll put out the bare bones. And then if it does do well, then, year down the line, we'll put out a special edition. Why? Put out that special edition first, and that's where you're going to get, people excited about it. I mean, Peter Jackson said there's, 5 to 6 hours still of footage that could have been added to what we've already got. That's your selling point right there.
Right.
That putting out the bare bones release is not your selling point. I mean, and then obviously again, this is proving that not everything that the Beatles do is going to be successful, right? We have to have something else to lure the fans to buy this, documentary that we all love. We've already seen it though, but in terms, let's get something special to entice us to buy it.
Hey, you want to say something, Kit?
oh no, just that. Yeah, I think this is ridiculous that they're not, releasing the additional footage. I mean, Peter Jackson has obviously wanted this
Right.
for some time. I mean, and he's like, I've got 5 hours ready to go. I mean, and the fans, I mean, Disney saying that, oh, there's no market for it. Really? Because, I mean, everybody on Facebook has been talking about it. I mean, of course people want it.
Well, they're not going to think that now. That's what bothers me. That's how they interpret it. They interpret
Yeah.
it as no interest. And it doesn't help any leaving the documentary up there to stream on Disney Plus. Should have been yanked when this release came out. I think
Yep.
is also a matter. It was a foolish marketing thing. Really makes the Beatles look bad, like they got a black eye. And this is one of the most exciting projects ever.
Exactly. Owen, what do you think?
Well, I think you can trust Peter Jackson. If there's one person you can trust, it's Peter Jackson. Except when it comes to Lord of the Rings, keep it out of his hands.
And when it comes to Dead Alive, sorry, Peter and King Kong, but that's just me. That's just me.
I just wanted to say that, whenever there's a new release that's out, Beatles or solo, I'm there getting it the day of its release. This is the first time in a long time I can ever remember that it didn't matter as much to me. I wasn't that excited about it because there's no bonus material. And also, there's a local record store that I go to periodically because I want to support local stores, not buy everything on Amazon. But I went to my local record store and they only had the Blu-ray. They were never sent the DVD, and they were told that it was only sent to major chains like Target. So this has really been mishandled in a number of ways, it looks like. And really, it just seems like when Peter was adding more material, Apple had no problem with it. The Beatles had no problem with it. It's all really comes down to Disney, I think. And, it's a shame that we didn't have, even if there was 10 minutes more, I would have been, anything to give me an incentive to go and get it.
Yeah.
But
It's your fault, Ken.
my fault. Disney's fault.
No, yeah, it's just a shame. I just hope this doesn't bode badly for interest in future Beatles releases as well, because that's sometimes the way companies think.
Yep.
There's no audience out there, they think, but everybody's seen it on Disney Plus, maybe more than once, and this was nothing extra, like you said, to purchase right away.
They never think it's the company doing the bad job.
Right. Well, it's funny too because didn't during that hot streak that the Beatles were in the late '90s and then into the 2000s, when "Let It Be Naked" was released, that wasn't a big seller either. So.
But yet they still followed it up with other.
Right. Exactly.
Well.
Right.
Like the Beatles' "Love" was a big success.
Big success. Right. Absolutely.
All right. In other news, as you all know, I'm sure, McCartney 1, 2, and 3. The box set is being offered in 3 limited edition formats: a 3 LP colored vinyl, 3 LP black vinyl, and 3 CD version. Each includes 3 special photo prints with notes from Paul about the album, and all 3 albums are available to stream in Dolby Atmos, a way to hear the music in 3D. It was mixed by Giles Martin and Steve Orchard and mastered by Emily Lazar, and you can listen to the Dolby Atmos on Amazon Music HD, Apple Music, and Tidal. Just released, if I can get it out here, it's a brand new book called Top of the Mountain, The Beatles at Shea Stadium, 1965, by Laurie Jacobson. All about that historic concert. That's my next book to read after I finish reading this book I'm reading on Yoko Ono. And I hope to be interviewing the author soon on my channel. I did say before there was another passing that I wanted to note, and that would be a member of one of the most successful songwriting teams of the 60s, and that's Lamont Dozier, the famous Holland Dozier Holland team. They wrote many classic songs for Motown, including an unbelievable 10 songs for the Supremes that all went to #1. Wow. And the Beatles, of course, were major fans of Motown artists. Ringo did cover the Supremes hit, Where Did Our Love Go, on his Bad Boy album. Lennon and McCartney were the most successful songwriters of the 60s, but there's no doubt Holland Dozier Holland would be right up there too. Very big loss right there. I know what a big fan we all are of 60s music and soul music, and Lamont Dozier, major name. We send out happy birthday wishes a couple of days ago on Friday to Billy J. Kramer, who turned 79 years old. And we have a reminder of some release dates. Julian Lennon's new album, Jude, comes out September the 9th. Ringo Starr's new EP, EP3, will be released on September 16th, the week after Julian. And that's
excuse me, Ken, which EP is this from Ringo? Which one is it?
EP3.
Oh, it's the third. Okay, yes. I got it.
It's hard to keep track of it all, right?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I just wasn't sure. All right.
Hey, he could have pulled a Traveling Wilburys Volume
3.
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
That'll be on CD and digitally. And we hope, as the rumors, we've been told, John and Yoko sometime in New York City. The archival box set should be coming out on John's birthday, October the 9th, and hopefully a Beatles Revolver box set sometime in October.
Ken, if we don't hear anything by mid-September for this sometime in New York City, then I'm thinking they're not going to do it this year. obviously we've been normally getting about a 6-week advance notice.
That's true.
For pre-orders. We are almost now a month away from John's birthday. Maybe we're pretty much right in that 6-week range. So if we don't hear something soon, I'm guessing they're going to scrap it for this year.
Well, we'll see. You always tend to think anniversaries, and
Right.
in the United States, sometime in New York City was a June release. So we passed that, but they could always be thinking John's birthday or December 8th or the last quarter of the year for Christmas or the holidays. So we shall see. But that's all the news I have for you this time.
I do want to say though, I did get that McCartney 1, 2, 3 vinyl set, and I did play the McCartney, and it's a very nice, quiet sounding record, and loved it. Sounded great. It is weird though because the McCartney 2 and the McCartney 3 are white vinyl, okay, but McCartney is a clear smoky vinyl, which kind of in a way made no sense that 2 out of 3 are white with 1 being a smoky clear vinyl, but hey, it's a nice set.
Maybe the next box set will be different, because I was thinking of that. I was gonna say it when we were doing the news, and you were saying how they should release it the first time, not make us go back for different versions of the Explorer edition and the suitcase edition. I was thinking of that, but hey, I got it in there.
Yep.
Zing.
Zing.
1, 2 McCartney, 1, 2, 3 box.
And that's it.
All right. Thank you, Ken, for all the news. So let's talk about this book. No one's ready to go. And
I have it. It's right here. Wow.
And really excited. We've been really excited to talk about this. George Harrison in the 1970s. And before we get to specific questions about the book, I thought it'd be good to first talk about the book generally for those who haven't had a chance to read it yet, like we have. So Owen, there are so many well, maybe not quite as many books about George Harrison as say Paul and others, but what gave you the idea to write about this particular subject, this particular era in George's life? Oh,
you're muted, buddy.
Unmute.
There you
go.
Excellent. Well, a man came down on a flaming pie and he said, "Take this, brother, George Harrison, 1970s." More honestly, the Sonic Bond series that I write for has a decade series, and they've had ones on Genesis and Marillion, whether in the 70s or 80s. And as I said on Tom Hunyadi's podcast, which is a very good podcast, Two Legs, just giving you a bit of promo. As I said, I was on an episode with Adrian Sinclair, and it was in the conversation I had with Adrian Sinclair where I said to him I was thinking of writing one about a solo Beatle, and he said George. And I'd written some pieces, like a piece on Dark Horse for Culture Sonar and a piece on Extra Texture for We Are Cult. And I'd written pieces. I'd written a piece on All Things Must Pass for Beatle Fan Magazine. And I felt like, well, I've already written about 3 or 4 of them. I'm basically halfway there. I have a lot of the research done. This will only take me a few months. Ultimately, it took me a year.
That's always the way, you think, oh, I can write this book in, no time. And then it just snowballs, right? Well, it's interesting how, this is such a crucial decade in George's life, both professionally and personally. And, you really managed to, condense it in this volume. I mean, how did you go about doing that? I mean, there's so much to cover here. How did you go about narrowing your focus?
One word: count line, or word count. Sorry,
word count.
I had a word count I had to hit, so that obviously I could have written. There is, as you say, a lot more I could have written, and
Right.
but the challenge was to write a compact book, and obviously some bits are more detailed than other parts. I mean, from 76 to 79, George really lives in his garden and just, has a family, which must have been very, very fruitful for him as a person. But that was that for me. Yes, okay, the book does get a bit slimmer in that end, but yeah, stuff like Dark Horse, there was just that could be a book unto itself. Just the tour, the album, uh, the chaos, the turbulence, the resurrection, and then he comes out with a beautiful album like Extra Texture. So there's a happy ending.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it just seems like there were these turbulent periods, and then, as you said, these happy endings, and it's just amazing how you were able to cover it in such a succinct but still pretty detailed way. So that's really a lot of focus. So was there anything as you went through the research and all, was there anything that really surprised you as you were going through this?
What surprised me was just how busy he was, especially from like 1970 to 1974. He doesn't stop producing, writing, recording. There's something for Ringo. There's the Dark Horse, the Dark Horse artist. There's the label he wants to found. He's writing songs for. He's producing an album for Ravi Shankar in 1974. No wonder he ended up having a near nervous breakdown. He should have taken a break for himself. For a man who everyone pencils as the quiet one, he was extraordinarily prolific.
Absolutely. And one thing that seems to be a theme in your book, I notice, is identity is trying, a man trying to find, struggling with his past identity and trying to establish his own identity, is his present identity, struggling between past and present. Was that is that something, as you started this book, was that something you expected to emerge, or was that something as you were writing it that you thought, this is the hook, this is it?
I expected it in his life. I was surprised how much of it appeared in his albums, which might be why I think 33 is his weakest, because it's the one that has the least amount of identity. Every one of his albums can be summed up as, so All Things Must Pass it's his proclamation of songwriting after the Beatles. Extra Texture is rising up from the Dark Horse. Dark Horse is the breakdown of his marriage. The George Harrison album is him as a father. Living in the Material World is very much him in Spiritual Extremis. I can't really summarize 33 and a third in such a neat little package, which is why it probably doesn't satisfy me as the other 5 albums do.
Okay, we'll get to that later, but we'll move on.
Oh, we will.
We'll get to that. But no, and that's another thing about this book, is that it really does inspire conversation, about the various albums. So, and that's something that, I think readers will enjoy. But let me pass it on to, to, now that we've got the kind of, I think people get the general idea of what the book is about. So let me pass it on. Joe, because I know, these 2 others have interviewed you before, but Joe has not. So
Yeah,
Joe.
I had a feeling I'd be first. I had a feeling for some reason. Yeah. What did you want to know, kid?
No.
What set me up? What?
Oh, no. Just I'm just throwing it out to you guys. Just gonna go around and if you have a few questions you want to throw out about.
Well, I'm not really that familiar with Owen's work. I just read this, and it was a pretty quick read, because it's not a very thick book. And and I listened to you on some of Ken Michaels' podcast on his YouTube channel, the Ken Michaels Radio. And the first thing that I remember listening to, if I can go off on a tangent here a little bit, was the John Lennon Walls and Bridges discussion, which I was happy to see somebody give that, a good support, because I like that album. I know Kit likes that album too.
Yeah.
And when everyone has the same kind of opinions, it gets dull, right? And everything's hunky dory when you agree with somebody, so there were no issues there. Although I would take issue with just the idea that, in my opinion, I wouldn't put it ahead of the Imagine album, as you do. But that's the first experience I had with you, as far as like watching the show, listening to what you had to say. But I think in this book, what I'm noticing is it fair to say a provocative style in some cases? I think you wear that like a badge of honor in a way.
Well, I do like my Serge Gainsbourg. I wouldn't say I deliberately provocateur, but I was told, I did actually consult Tom on I said, will people be upset if I say 33 and a Third is not a good album? He said, yeah. I said, okay, I'm writing.
Well, yeah, I have notes that I've taken, a lot of notes, but they're basically just differing of opinions, really.
Yeah.
So I don't have much to ask about, like why you wrote the book, just things that I would disagree with,
Mhm.
and I don't know if you want to get like one thing subject at a time or just in general. Let me know.
I mean, however, is there anything in particular just that, jumped out at you? I mean,
Well, let's start out with texture. Let's get it right out. Let's get it right
All
out.
right.
Let's get the elephant in let's go right to the elephant in the room.
I want to make sure my audio is working. I want to make sure I don't have any technical mishaps, because we prepared a show here on Talk More Talk for Extra Texture, and I was dying to do that because I can't stand that album. If I could be blunt, I think it's George's worst album, or it's tough. Gontrapo and for me and Extra Texture. So, but that day that we went to do the show, we were getting ready to go live, and my audio could not work.
It was
and
amazing.
I had to bow out of that show. So
George.
here's the chance.
So it's George.
Yeah, we said it was George.
I said I think George from Beyond is like helping. So just bear with me. No, but all kidding aside, I know you really like that album a lot. I think it's one of maybe your second favorite of George's albums, second best. Next to All Things Must Pass.
Oh, it's number one.
Oh, number one even. I thought it was two. Even more so. That makes it even more delicious. Okay. Well, for me, I mean, I want to talk to you about it, but for me, I happen to think I didn't get a chance to say this before, so let me do it for the record. I got some words. I find it kind of dreary, find it dirge-like. I think the songs are all very similar, boring, dull, repetitive. I think George's vocals are among his worst. Warbly, whiny. The production is weak. The thing is, I do like the first three songs quite a bit, though. I do like the song "You." It's the only real up tempo number, really. I love Answers at the End, and I love This Guitar Can't Keep From Crying. After that, I've tried many times. For me, it's just not my thing, and I just find a lot of disagreements. One of the things you said was the song, and Tom's going to appreciate this. Can't Stop Thinking About You. That particular song, you were saying in the book, it's you can only imagine, like when it first came out. I'm paraphrasing here, like how wonderful and exciting it must have been to hear this vibrant and virile song. And I'm thinking to myself, can't stop thinking about you. Over and over again. I'm like,
Didn't know you'd be
you kidding?
second to this, did you, Owen?
No, you did. So that's really the first thing I have to talk. It's just not my bag. And I'm can you elaborate for people that don't know what you really enjoy so much about it that I'm missing and other people are missing. I mean, I
Yeah,
read it, but
that was a question I had actually. Is
yeah,
convince me. Yeah,
yeah.
convince me.
Let me know, because it's it's going to take a lot to convince me, but everything's subjective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, I don't. I'm. If I can't convince you, I can't convince you. All I can do is write about it. And what I hear is this: well, an incredible musician putting his life and soul into his instruments, as opposed to into his lyric craft, as he had on the first three albums. So it's a great sonic achievement. I mean, as you mentioned, the first three tracks. I mean, this guitar is just rich with sound and atmosphere. Can't stop thinking about you. Is has a beautiful backing. You and a little bit more of you. There's just frothiness and great saxophone and great brass, and then we have that nice kind of jaunty vaudeville number at the end with a member of the Bonzo Dog Doodah's band actually doing a sort of a semi kind of kitsch rap on it. So I mean, it's an album of textures. It's an album of contradiction. It's much more buoyant than either Material World or Dark Horse, which were fairly what is the word? So I wouldn't say they were dark artists, but they were uncompromising records. Whereas this one is more accessible. It veers more towards pop, and it's just a great expression of sound.
Well, I got to think about that for a while. I'll watch the playback of this to see if I play it a few dozen times, the playback here, to see if I can, because for me, I don't know. Conversely, I know you're not a big fan of Cloud9, which I think is one of the greatest things George ever did, second best after All Things Must Pass. I think George's voice there is in top notch. He's never sounded better. And indeed, I'd say the same for the Traveling Wilburys work that he did. He never sounded better. It's commercial now. I mean, it's more commercial. Do you maybe not appreciate maybe the commercial stuff from George as much? Would that be fair to say? Or is that not fair?
No, I wouldn't say I don't enjoy commercial stuff. I mean, What Is Life probably is one of his best songs. That's very commercial. Give Me Love is so commercial. I think it's when I feel he's doing commercial for the sake of commercial. So like we've got My Mind Set on You, which is, them trying to jump on la 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 rambla bam 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 bam, and then listening to the charts for a guy who's never enjoyed listening to the charts or trying to chase the hits. He's holed himself up in this Gothic mansion in Friars Park. I might have got the terminology for Gothic. This huge house in it's surrounded by pastoral green, and he loves his Dylan, he loves his Indian music, and suddenly he's trying to make this big ultra 80s record, and some of it to me sounds just like a guy trying to speak ultra 80s, like Devil's Radio is a song I can't stand.
Ken.
I know.
I know. I was laughing as Joe looked really wounded.
I love that song.
I'm not laughing at you.
I know. Just for One Day, I find quite schmaltzy. Wreck of the Hesperus, I think is a good song, but the vocals a bit weedy. I don't think George is quite committed enough. But it does have Fish on the Sand, which is a lovely, lovely song. I really like that song.
Wreck of the Hesperus is probably my least favorite track on Cloud9, but boy, the others I love. That's What It Takes. Someplace Else. I could go on and on. Devil's Radio, as we said. I think that's a great rocker. You don't get George rocking too much, so that's why I like it. But again, this is all individual. It's all subjective.
Yeah. As I said to, sorry. Yep.
And was that part of when you were writing the book? Was that part of like you wanted to have dialogue, engage with the reader of like expressing your views and inviting the reader to kind of say what's your opinion, or was it just wanting to express your views and but kind of inspire? Did you want to inspire this kind of dialogue?
Obviously any opinion is an opinion. I read the Peter Doggett You Never Give Me Your Money book, and I wonder, are we listening to the same album when he's describing Ram as as weaker, as inferior to George and John's work from the same time, and he describes Venus and Mars as lightweight. But I still think it's a beautifully written book. I think it's an incredible book. You Never Give Me Your Money. Some of the Ian MacDonald's opinions I don't agree with, but it's still a fantastic book.
Sure.
I don't expect everyone to agree with that. I'm not a haughty reverend saying this is how you should think. It's art.
No.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to throw in before I forget, because I have it outlined in the book. Now I'm going to throw some John Lennon stuff here and there, because John Lennon gets pretty skewered in a few places in here, which is not unusual these days. I have a thing about that. But
it's been a while, Joe. It's just not these days. So that's another story.
It's been a while. What I hear, see, the thing is, everybody's got their opinion, and Extra Texture is your favorite George album. But I just can't help mentioning this. When you again, it's your opinion, but when you say something like about John's early albums, you said, I guess, what is it? Packing much of the rebellion that was heard on Lennon's excellent Plastic Ono Band, Give Me Some Truth, was ultimately wasted among a series of ill thought out compositions which earmarked the first of a trilogy of Lennon albums that did little to live up to his legend. If Imagine doesn't live up to Lennon's legend, I don't know what does. Care to expand on that?
I'm going to get a kicking for this. Actually, if you go into Wikipedia right now, you will actually see that I'm referenced in one of my articles, and it starts off, less impressed, Eoghan Lyng of Far Out magazine, and it continues into that.
Hey, you got cited Wikipedia. I have too. Yeah. We've made it.
But the Imagine album, it's a bit schmaltzy in place. It's schizophrenic, there's anger, there's schmaltz. It doesn't have, and when it's angry, besides Give Me Some Truth, I think the anger is misjudged. We have that really, really horrible song, How Do You Sleep, which is like, I faked every orgasm, Paul. You never satisfied me.
Well, it's brilliant. It's brilliant, in my opinion, as a put-down song, which is what it is, like Dylan's Positively 4th Street is dripping with venom. That's what it's supposed to do as a put-down song, Whether people like the subject matter or not is another story, I think. But.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the Dylan song you named, like George Harrison's Wah Wah, they're good songs. They're laced with melody. With How Do You Sleep, it is just John, putting a guitar to, how am I feeling today? I'm gonna make Paul feel like crap.
Yeah, I gotcha. One last quote, because I want somebody else to take a turn, but I got it. Okay. I want to say, back to Cloud 9, the way it's worded, I mean, I say what's on my mind a lot on my channel that I do. I think a lot of my viewers, they like that, But the way this is written, so I can appreciate that. But the way this is written about Cloud 9, it says, but there was no denying the fact, that Cloud 9 was the slightest album of his career. That's wow.
Okay.
Hey, that's it.
I mean, I can see people saying, who does this guy think he is? He's not even 30, and he can say what is George's worst album.
Well, yeah, you'll be there soon, though. 30, you'll be there before you know it.
But
I don't know. I mean, it's a bit of flower, a bit of narrative. I wrote it to suit the narrative to interweave, and but when you read it out like that, it is a bit strong. There's no denying it's an objective fact. We have the scientific charts. It is not as good as his other work.
Yeah. No, but like I said, that to me, that was part of the fun of reading the book.
Yeah.
I mean, it got my hair up a little bit. Of course, things that I agreed with you on.
Yeah.
Living in the material world, 100%. I agree. There's no all things must pass. I agree. Dark Horse, I agree with you. 33 1/3 didn't agree, and I'll let somebody else handle 33 1/3. That's how it is, isn't it? Doesn't it seem like that? If it's somebody, he's right. Oh, this guy, he's right on. This guy, boy, he's brilliant. This guy. Yeah, wait a minute, what's he saying here?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
thank you.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking about engaging with the reader, because when I wrote Michael Jackson FAQ, I did do a bit of that in that book, and I was hoping that it would inspire a dialogue with the reader. I was hoping, somebody would say, what is she talking about, that was his best album? What about, because you want people to, and that's part of the fun of being a fan, is debating and being like, no, is this, you think that's his best album? That's part of what's fun about being a fan. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. I mean, Jason Carty from Nothing Is Real gave me a new opinion. I always thought Paul McCartney's Press song was awful. He's like, no, Owen, it's about sex. It's Paul and Linda having sex.
Oh, and I also count me as somebody else along with Tom, I believe, and I think Ken, who likes the song "Spies Like Us." I do like that. You can put me in the club as a fan.
I'm with you, Owen, on that one. I'm not a big fan of that song.
It's awful. Okay.
I'm not a huge fan of that song. I'll stand with you there, Owen. Absolutely. Okay. Let's see. Tom, how about you? Let's.
Hi, Tom.
Hello, Owen.
Hi,
Good
Tom.
to see you, Chup. I listen. I appreciate opinions, and I appreciate again younger, even people younger than me, because we tend to look at it a little differently with somebody than with people that actually got to visit us at real time. So I mean, I do at times appreciate different opinions than just the same old. But let's get a little bit into his early career. The All Things Must Pass. I mean, one of my favorite songs on here, Run of the Mill. And I like kind of what you read here, and hopefully you can elaborate it on a little bit more. But you write here, more to Run of the Mill than throwing digs at McCartney. The lyric confronts the changes that were surrounding Harrison and challenges him to accept the direction the world was presenting to him. Can you just talk a little bit about what these changes and challenges that were going on in early Harrison's career, that people that younger fans of Harrison might maybe get an idea more of what you're trying to say here?
Well, I think that song just shows how heartbroken he was by the Beatles breakup, because you read crap everywhere that George was the only one who was happy to. He was as devastated as anyone was by the breakup of the Beatles. It was, he'd known John and Paul all his life, and suddenly they weren't in his life anymore, and it was a horrendous time. And it's those lines like, "I won't carry the blame for you," and he says in his book "I'm Your Mine," a lot of it was about all the chaos in Apple, but that opening line, "Everyone has choices," right. Whether to or not to raise their voices. Yeah,
and it's funny though that he writes that too, because when you see footage or even with the Good Get Back, when there was a lot of confrontations, no one was raising their voices. So I'm just like kind of confused that when the stuff. I'm sure there was behind the scenes fights and stuff like that. But
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, again, I think it's a wonderfully written song, and kind of like the digging with with the Paul thing, where Sue Me Sue You Blues is kind of directed towards that, and then also kind of like putting his phone number at the end of Miss Odell. Making fun of the fan club with the Jim Keltner type thing. It just seems like he's always kind of like digging at Paul any chance that he could.
Yeah. They had a weirdly complicated relationship, didn't they? I don't know if they ever really got it together until George's death, sadly. There were even frictions during the Free as a Bird recordings.
Right.
Yeah.
How does putting Paul's phone number at the end of Miss Odell dig at Paul?
I just think it's kind of disrespectful in a way. I mean, do you think Paul wants to get bombarded with phone calls?
Even John didn't do that.
Yeah. I mean that's listen. I mean, he's a high profile figure, and someone's put. I mean, listen. If I made the mistake once of doing this as a boss at work, I gave an employee somebody's phone number, and turns out it wasn't the best thing I ever did in my life. You know what I mean? So in a way, I think I think it's just a small dig, at him. Why would he do it to begin with? I mean,
Yeah.
why would you do something like that if you didn't mean it as some kind of dig at him? You know,
I don't know.
Yeah.
You're reading too much
I-
into it. Also,
maybe.
at that time, that might not have been his phone number anymore. That was his old childhood phone.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think what I do think is I do think George probably enjoyed the fact that Paul didn't dig the Ruttles movie. I suspect that put a smile on his face.
Yeah. No sense of humor. No sense
yeah.
of humor.
You wrote here, Spector encouraged Harrison to push himself as a vocalist. Let's talk about him. Are you a fan of him as a vocalist? Some people, argue that, he was probably the weakest of the main three writers. And obviously we have Dark Horse, and we got Joe was singing Can't Stop Thinking About You. Talk about George as a vocalist. What are your thoughts?
No, I would agree. I would put him up there with Graham Gouldman of 10cc. I think, a fantastic backing vocalist. When I interviewed Lol Cream, he said he made that point about Graham Gouldman, that Graham was always there with the notes as a backing vocalist. He always knew what notes to hit and could hit melody quite well. But he was limited in a way that John and Paul seemingly weren't. John and Paul could literally sing anything and could make it their own and make it and sell it. George was a bit more limited in that regard. But I mean, you listen to "Hear Me, Lord," and he's singing from the bottom of his gut on the whole thing. I think that is up there with one of his best vocals. Spector did encourage him during the making of the album. Many of his notes saying, "We can do better. We can keep pushing." I think there's something here. And Spector probably gave him the encouragement that perhaps George Martin never quite gave George. I know in retrospectively, Phil Spector has turned out to be quite a horrible human being. And if I hope if there's a hell, I hope he's in it. But there's no doubt that he was an incredible producer, and on this occasion they produced an outstanding work together. I think Harrison worked better with Spector than John Lennon did, as we can see on songs like How.
Really? Well, there's another one of your famous opinions. Something that I kind of don't necessarily agree with you on here is listening to this is referring to the concert for Bangladesh. Listening to the Sitar Suite in 2021, it holds up exceptionally well, offering the album timelessness, and turbocharged rock numbers did not. Best of all, it spoke wonders about the power of Shankar's presence over Harrison, that he granted Shankar so much time and leeway on stage. So you're pretty much just saying that you think that Shankar's performance stands up more than what the rest of the show had to offer.
Yeah, well, I mean that of course is an opinion of mine. I think that is the performance of the night. But what I was trying to say there was, the rockers were so endemic in the 1970s. It couldn't have been any other decade. They couldn't be 80s rockers. They're not 1960s rockers. They're, barreling, drum heavy, bravado driven, like wah wah or Don't Come Easy, all these big, anthemic chorus heavy rockers. So those are all dated to the 70s. The Indian sitar suites could be any decade.
Right.
That's basically what I was trying to say there.
I thought Bob Dylan stole the show.
Okay.
Bangladesh.
It's funny because Shankar was getting all this love, Monterey Pop, Bangladesh, and then comes the '74 tour, and and then all of a sudden, a few short years later, all of a sudden, nobody wants anything to do with him, and he's regarded as one of the great world music leaders. And one of my sad thing is when we first moved to Arizona in 2010, he was on tour, and we bought tickets to see him, and I was just like, oh, I can't wait. The day of, he announced that he was sick, and, and the show, and he didn't do any more shows after that. Not long after he passed, but I really wish I would have had a chance to see him live. But I do think he's an amazing artist. I do think that the rest of those numbers stand up more than what maybe you think. But yeah, I mean, I think he gives amazing performances, and I just feel bad that, you know, over time, you know, only maybe world music lovers will appreciate his stuff now, and not as much, you know, as maybe they should.
Yeah, I mean, I think George called him the greatest musician in the world, and there's a reason for that.
Mm,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Hmm.
You know, and then getting to the 74 tour, you know, do you feel that same way with, you know, with the quality of the musicians and the numbers that he did? I mean, do you think it, you know, take his voice out of it, you know, because
Yeah.
we know his voice was probably the downfall of the tour. But I mean, do you think, you know, changing lyrics or the song choices might not have been the best decision for that tour?
No, I think the tour was fantastic. I think the choice of continent was the problem. He should have done it in Europe, not in America, because I'm I'm going to be very careful how to say this, knowing that all four of my co-hosts or all my hosts are from America, so I have to be very careful saying this. But in 70s, Europe was a bit more liberal in terms of music than I think America was. I think in America, they wanted the hits. They wanted it to be a bit more a jukebox thing, a stadium thing. I think if George had gone across to like Munich, Paris, London, yada yada, bring a ragtag of Indian and American musicians, bringing this kind of great collage of music, I think would have gone down a huge hit all across Europe around the countercultural scene. But it just was the wrong continent, but of course the big bucks are in the US.
Right, right.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
I think it sounds fantastic. I mean, okay, yeah, I can see why he was annoying people. He might have been stirring a bit, although I like to stir a bit, as has been pointed out on this show. He may have been stirring a bit with, you know, in his life I love him more, or whatever he's saying, or the way he changed something. But it's his prerogative, and I mean, he didn't want to do what Paul McCartney wanted to do, which was, you know, to slavishly treat the Beatles as, you know, the emblems of the 1960s. He was moving on with his life and with his art, and why not?
Yeah, which kind of in a way surprises me when you look back that he did even include any Beatles songs in there. If he wants to separate himself that, you know, that badly from, you know, the 60s and the Beatles, why do anything at all when you have, you know, such a, you know, a wealth of music? I mean, you know, not all, you know, top 20 hits obviously, but at least, you know, songs that people are going to know at that point in time. I mean, he was still selling his albums were still selling fairly well, you know, even though Dark Horse didn't do as well as Living in the Material World and All Things Must Pass, obviously. But that's it for now, Ken.
Wait, how much can we bear?
Yeah.
No, this is a fascinating conversation. What you just said, Owen, about how George should have taken his tour to Europe, that really just boggles my mind, because if you take a look at the Beatles' success worldwide with solo careers, they had more success in the United States than anywhere in the world. And, you know, you take a look, and we get feedback, especially from, if you're watching, David Jackson, who's always pointing out how the Beatles' solo careers did in the UK, and how Ringo was a has-been by the time Goodnight Vienna came out. And certainly, you know, people were thinking that way about George by probably that time after Living in the Material World or Dark Horse. His albums really didn't do that well, but they still did fairly well here in the United States. All of George's albums, even Dark Horse and Extra Texture, went top 10. So I'm just surprised that you would say that, how you'd think he'd be more received in Europe as opposed to the United States.
Well, I mean, Paul's first tour was in Europe with Wings when he wanted to warm them up before, you know, he brings them to America to do these huge sellout tours. So just something that's a bit out there, a bit more experimental, that's a bit more, this isn't, you know, these aren't the great hits. We're trying something new here with progression, with music. I think European audiences would have been a bit more open to it. But of course, they wouldn't have sold like they did over in the US.
All right. Well, there's one thing I wanted to mention here, and I found this to be. I'm really glad that you wrote this. Not that I don't totally agree with this, but I'm going to read what you said in one of your chapters here. This follows the whole "My Sweet Lord" lawsuit. You wrote, had the Beatles encouraged Harrison to write tunes from the beginning of their career, giving him the chance to match Lennon and McCartney on every record, perhaps Harrison's interest in spiritual rock, and more importantly, an escape from his growing resentment of the band, would not have been as feverish as it would manifest itself in 1970. Then again, the world would have been robbed of My Sweet Lord, a hymn that blew even the most hardened of religious skeptics, Lennon included, away with its sincerity. From great anger came a work of tremendous beauty, and though the tune may not have been original, the lyric and sentiment definitely were. And although it took a certain amount of courage to denounce the sanctity of religion in the 1970s, it was arguably harder to make a case for it, especially one with such a dazzling sound. The song has outlived both its writer and co-producer, and will likely continue to inspire songwriters long after you and I have completed our earthly journeys. For Harrison, the humiliation was temporary, but the legacy of the song is eternal. I love the way that's ended there. But first of all, about My Sweet Lord, because it's a great song and it's a great record. And I think it's one of the greatest hits that any of the solo Beatles have had. But to say from the very beginning that had John and Paul encouraged him, I don't think that, because John and Paul had already been writing for quite a while.
Yeah.
George was not the prolific writer early on. From Don't Bother Me, in the early years, he only wrote 1 or 2 songs a year up until 1965. Even if he encouraged George, he never would have written as much as John and Paul, or on the level as John and Paul. He's still a few years behind them. They already had several years under their belt as songwriters. So don't get me wrong. I think one of the biggest mistakes the Beatles ever made was not recording more Harrison songs towards the end. But in the early years, he wasn't writing that much at all. He was just learning how to write.
Well, there is that walk when John and Paul took where they made the decision, do we go Lennon McCartney or do we go Lennon McCartney Harrison? And they decide we're doing Lennon McCartney. So, I mean, why couldn't they have said, no, there's 3 of us. Why don't the 3 of us write together? And the 3 of us, and then literally come back to George and say, come on, we're going to write a song together right now, instead of it. So the 3 of them as teenage boys in Liverpool start writing together. I mean, Paul has said George didn't show an interest, but maybe he could have said, come on, George, let's write a song together. I don't know if he ever actually did that. It was as you read out, it's all musing and hypothetical. I think George actually needed to be that. I think he needed to be that sort of that silent one, the dark horse as he saw himself, the one that people didn't recognize as this great talent to have something as incredible as the All Things Must Pass album. I think he needed that competitive spark, which is ironic for such a deeply spiritual album.
That's a good point. You just don't know what would have happened if it was a trio as songwriters. How much would George have contributed as a songwriter to what John and Paul were writing? Or maybe even songs that George wrote, how much would John and Paul try to contribute to it? It's kind of interesting in that regard.
And you see the enthusiasm that in that Great Living the Material World documentary was why I think he was writing letters to back home or whatever. And you see the enthusiasm and just in the letter of when he found out that he was gonna, when they were gonna go live and he was gonna get to sing just as many songs as John and Paul were gonna sing live. I think these were in the Cavern days or whatever. Or I think Brian Epstein came up with this that for him to be out there just as much as the other 2. I mean, if someone was there, like Ken was saying, to maybe say, hey, why don't you come on in here and write with us? I think maybe his attitude towards that may have changed.
Yeah, I mean, Paul did later admit, okay, and I Love Her, the main hook is effectively George, but why didn't he credit that to George in 1964? Right. Why can't that be Lennon McCartney Harrison? Because the thing that everyone remembers, doom, 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 is George's hook.
Yeah. I mean, know how many you can apply that in the Beatles catalog.
Yeah, with different Beatles. They were
Not
down there.
only that, but George Martin's contributions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah.
Just the idea to speed up "Please Please Me" made all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't he get a songwriting credit?
I think he should.
Mhm.
Okay, but that's not the way things were done.
Or in
Yeah.
my life, even in my life, I mean, it's a lot. George Martin, you could go endlessly with
Yeah, and not only that,
keyboards.
yeah, but you were trying to say you think that because John and Paul held George back, that's what led to him seeking a spiritual, knowledge.
I,
Because it was also he didn't get enough enjoyment, enough fulfillment from all the commercial success of the Beatles. That's why he turned that way. But you think it's more because John and Paul held him back?
no, it's not so much John and Paul. He was trying to find his own way, that he would find a way that wasn't John or Paul, and he found it in spiritualism. That happened. It happened to it was a happy coincidence that he found it something he's enjoying in his spare time. This is a way he can write that's not Lennon's as acerbic as Lennon or as whimsical as McCartney. It's pure Harrison, which must have been. It was Brandon Flowers of the Killers who pointed out, how daunting is that? You're in the band with the two best songwriters in the world, and you still find your own lyrical voice. But that probably is what he needed, to be in the band with the two best and say, how can I match this, or how can I make my own distinctive voice? And he found it in spirituality.
But he also found it in his music. I mean, even from the beginning, "Don't Bother Me" doesn't sound like the other Lennon McCartney song.
Maybe not. It's also not very good, but that's neither here nor there.
Oh, I love it.
Talking to me.
And you don't forget the Indian stuff, obviously. I mean, Inner Light and Love You Too and all those kind of songs.
Yeah.
I think it's great that George had his own kind of thing, his own identity, personality, music wise.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Stands out the Beatles. But I also would disagree about what you had to say about George as a singer. No, he's not as strong vocally as John and Paul, but he had his own voice that matched his own music. And I think that's really important in a way, because you take any George Harrison song, like, for example, "My Sweet Lord." I can't picture John singing it. I can't picture Paul singing it.
Yeah.
It's far more effective the way he sings the song matches whatever he's trying to convey in the music. He's feeling, especially the spiritual stuff. And he certainly, I will agree with you about it as a background singer, because he doesn't get nearly the credit that he deserves for his harmony work with the Beatles.
Right.
Because very often, if you're doing 3-part harmony, what George did, like the middle part, is the most difficult part to sing.
Yeah.
So he deserves a lot of credit in that regard. And then there's also his guitar playing, which is a whole other thing. But yeah, just out of curiosity, because I know you just said "Extra Texture" is your favorite, even above "All Things Must Pass."
I think "All Things Must Pass" is the best, but my personal favorite is "Extra Texture."
Okay.
Oh.
So if you were to rate, I know that you didn't like 33 1/3, but if you were to rate,
and I want to talk about that a little bit later.
If you were to rate his entire catalog, let's go beyond the 70s here, up to Brainwash studio albums. Would you say which is your least favorite up to your favorite? Could you do that?
Yeah, sure.
Top of your head?
So yeah, I can do that right now.
Oh boy.
So Cloud9 is least favorite. I would then go "Somewhere in England" because it's a mess of an album, both in the original and the way that the production had it. 33 goes next. Then we have "Gone Troppo," because although it's not brilliant, it's still whimsical and fun. And then we're going to go to "Dark Horse." Then we're going to go to, I would say, George Harrison. Then I would say we have "Material World." Then we have "Brainwashed." Then we have "Extra Texture," and then we have "Must Pass." Have I missed any albums?
I think you got all.
I think you got them
I
all.
thought you were going to forget "Brainwashed," but then you came out with it. "Brainwashed" always tends to get overlooked a lot. I tend to forget it. I like it. I like the album, but
I think it's fantastic. top 3 for me. I wrote it. I actually have a piece on Culture Sonar calling it, saying it's one of his best.
Yep, I saw that. Yeah, I think it's gotten better with age. I really do. Yeah.
Well, I just want to add that I enjoy having someone like you on my channel and here, really, because I like hearing different opinions, even if I don't agree with them. And it's really important to hear what younger people have to say.
Well,
Their ears may not match what we're hearing.
Right.
Right.
People are discovering, especially the indie crowd, a lot of early McCartney stuff now that they dig, or the DIY stuff from McCartney. It's just as important to hear what young people have to say about four Beatles. So not as important whether I agree with you or not.
Right.
But to respect each other's opinion. But hey,
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had a couple of questions, and one of them does have to do with 33 and a third, so we can get into that. But I wanted to mention, I've been getting a bit more into Dark Horse lately, the album, because it wasn't one that was a favorite of mine, but it's I've really grown to appreciate it more, and I like how you put this, made me think about it even more. Dark Horse is an album of pain, pathos, and purging violence. And you call it, in some ways, this was his plastic Ono band, his blood on the tracks, his great expression of agony in a decade that showed little of the 1960s idealism. And I wonder if you could expand a bit about, why, you liken it to his Plastic Ono band. I just think that's a very interesting comparison.
Well, there's a very good episode I appeared on with Ken Michaels.
Mhm.
So I think because some of it is very confessional, so sad, simply shady. He's so sad. He's addressing his breakdown with his marriage. On Simply Shady, he's hinting at his alcoholism. There's that lyric to old Clapper. She's gone with old Clapper. It's him embracing the fact that the media knows that his wife has run off with another man. There's a lot of very, very interesting stuff there. I mean, and some of it is very hopeful at the same time. You've got Ding Dong and Maya Love, and that counters the angrier parts of the album. I mean, some of the guitar playing is just so ferocious. I love it. Like going back to Simply Shady, I just love the blues hooks and the barreling it all is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you made me think about it, that may have been one of the reasons why I was initially that I didn't like it, because it is, no pun intended, dark. I mean, it is I mean, it is, but the more I've listened to it, the more I've appreciated it. And going back to the tour for a second, you also, so what you said made me rethink the tour, because it is, typically has been so, absolutely trash. It was in the press, obviously, because of his voice. But I like how you phrased it, how you said, here, let me see if I can find the quote here. Here it is. That the way he was changing, we mentioned earlier about changing some of the lyrics, and of course how he brought Ravi Shankar in. You said he told an audience in Vancouver, prepared to die for Indian music, but not for rock and roll. And he highlighted the importance of change in the aforementioned press conference. It mentioned a previous one. The Beatles were yesterday's music. Harrison expected everyone, including himself, to live in the present. And I thought that was a very interesting thing. And it sounds like, you talk about how the Dark Horse tour was kind of a personal and professional transformation for him. Could you say a little bit more about that? Why you think we should think of the Dark Horse tour as a bit more than just the Dark HOARSE tour?
Well, I mean, it was his return to the live stages. It was him him addressing the fact that he was in fact a divorced man, that his lieutenant had walked off with his woman in cavalier terms, and this was him, embracing it through music and trying to and doing it in a style that excited him much more than the conventions of pop, and he wasn't kowtowing to stadium rock, and he wasn't kowtowing to what arena regulations. He was doing what mattered to him and what got him going. So it was very personal. It was very aching. It was very intricate, but it wasn't very successful. And some of it didn't hit off, and some of it was a bit too haughty. So especially the way that he berated the audiences who just wanted to have a good time. That mightn't have been his finest hour. But at least what we could say about George is at all times he was honest, and he could never do anything that didn't mean something to him, except perhaps for Cloud 9, where he just wanted the cash.
Oh, please.
Was his issues with handmade films around with the making of Cloud 9, or was that after Cloud 9?
A little after.
A little after? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. All right, let's get to 33 and a third. Gentlemen.
Yeah.
And we can kick it off. You mentioned at the beginning of this show that you felt Cloud 9, we talked about identity. That how I said this is a major theme of this book about him in this decade trying to wrestle with his past identity and forming a new one. And you said that you felt 33 and a third lacked an identity. Can you say a little bit more about that? We'll kick it off there.
It's just a collection of pop songs, really. When you listen to it, it's just a collection of, the one song that I really dig on that album is this song, because it's it's lacerating and just showing how ridiculous the whole court case was, and in his eyes was just stupid. This wasn't a war, this wasn't a hate crime, it was a pop song, it was a rock song, and you're bringing him to court over this. But the rest of it, flits just from, True Love's okay, it's quite nice. Cracker Palace, I don't think is very good. I will get hate mail for that.
What's your address?
I just don't think it has a thematic hook the way the rest of them do, and I don't think he was pushing himself as an artist as he had been. Like, he's pushing himself as a musician on both Dark Horse and Extra Texture. I just don't think he's pushing himself to that level on 33, and he hasn't found his new narrative voice the way he has on George Harrison, which is him as a father.
Gentlemen,
How about starting out with Olivia? Is he pretty much just starting to really get involved with Olivia around that time, or do I get my years wrong around the time 33 and a third?
Is it dark-haired lady is on that, or dark lady?
That's later. That's on George Harrison.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I thought maybe around 76ish or so. But you say there's more negatives than positives on the album, and that's I don't agree with that, but that's interesting to hear. And you made your stance clear when you just said that he's like just doing it to have like a lot of pop songs on there. There are a lot of pop songs.
Yeah.
I happen to love Crackerbox Palace. You said in the book it's better remembered for its accompanying video. And while I love the video, I would say the same thing about this song. I'm not a big this song fan, but I think the video. And I do appreciate what he was trying to say, though. He's trying to talk about the court case. So at least he's got something to say, a point to make with the song. But I know you said something like "see yourself." I think you called that typically caustic fodder. And what I found very interesting, and I hope I got this right, with "Woman, Don't You Cry for Me," you said it offers listeners the shot in the arm the album needs after such a long interlude of uninteresting material. And I agree, except the one problem. It's the first song on the album. So that long interlude of uninteresting material for me you're talking about was Extra Texture. So I do.
Oh.
So I do agree. I agree. That's the. I agree.
Oh
But
man.
you know, I just thought that would be an interesting little shot. You know, yeah. I so
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
think it's.
Go ahead.
I
Go ahead.
just, I just think it's
No,
a
no.
diverse. I mean, I love the different musical, genre. I mean, there's just quite a few different genres of music on this album, which I think's what makes it interesting. In myself, I mean, I don't necessarily hear pop songs on this. I mean, sure, I mean, yeah, there's we've got this song in Crackerbox Palace, but Pure Smoky, I think, is one of his, is a fantastic track, and I've always said that Beautiful Girl, I think, is one of his greatest ballads. So and Woman Don't You Cry for Me, yeah, I mean, I think that's a terrific, terrific track. Learning How to Love You is great too. So I just hear a lot of diversity in this album, and it just shows his range too. I mean, as we all
Dear
know,
One. How about Dear
yeah,
One?
yeah, Dear
Yeah.
One, yeah. I mean, that's what I get from this album. It's just his range, and I think lyrically, it's got some good, nice stuff on here as well.
I really think it represented a growth for him too. And we've talked about how I certainly can hear more of a jazz influence in his music, going from Far East Man into 33 and a third, and that
Yeah.
might be the Tom Scott influence on the album or whatever. But certainly when you hear something like Pure Smoky or Learning How to Love You, it really has a light jazz feel to it, which I think was different for George at the time. And yeah, you do have the pop. You've got this song in Crackerbox Palace. It's What You Value is very poppy. And Woman Don't You Cry for Me. I tell you one thing about that song is that it's very interesting to hear the evolution of that song. It dates back to All Things Must Pass, and it even had like a hillbilly arrangement to it. And here it's like out and out R&B
Right.
on 33 and a third. And I think that there's definite growth in him as an artist. And also, I think it was very important for him at the time because he does have that reputation of being very serious, very moody, and let's see the comical side of George Harrison. Let's make fun of the My Sweet Lord lawsuit
Right.
and Crackerbox Palace and showing all the strange characters around his mansion there and popping out of the baby pram. And so I think that was a good thing for him at the time to give the public a lighter, more fun image of who George Harrison was. There's more to him than just this serious guy. That's one of the things. I think I even said this in our interview, but I kind of equate Paul Simon the same way. Paul Simon can be a very serious person, very, very moody at times, and then he's got the greatest sense of humor. Just watching him on Saturday Night Live with all the comedy sketches he does. So I think there's those two sides of George, and I think that the lighter, more comical side came through in 33 and a third, among other things. You still have the spiritual, you still have Dear One.
Yeah.
And True Love was a great arrangement, I think, of the Cole Porter song. So I think it's a solid album. I think 33 and a third and George Harrison are pretty much equal in my opinion. Two of the best albums in Paul's in George's.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, that was a question I had because I've always kind of considered them like bookends. 33 and a third George Harrison, and you
What are you
mentioned
talking about bookends?
yeah.
Okay,
Oh God. Oh,
it's
here
a
we go.
Honeymooners reference, folks.
I know. I
Yeah,
know.
No kidding.
No kidding. But anyway, I always considered them bookends. Actually, and you mentioned in your book that you think George Harrison, which I also love, is the more mature album. And so why, can you expand upon that?
Sure.
Why you think that's more mature than 33 and a third?
Because he's letting out his inner child, which only came out because of being a dad. Like, would he have written something as frothy as Blow Away if he wasn't carrying a little infant in his hand? I don't know. I don't think so. He's going into that kind of gooey, kind of beautiful boy era of like John Lennon's music, which John Lennon would have on the Double Fantasy album. it's all, you know, a bit nicer, a bit softer. What I don't like about his remake of Not Guilty is it's lost its edge. I don't think he should have recorded that. I mean, when you hear the Beatles rendition, it's nasty. It's almost punk-like, and we don't have that in the second one. It's just a bit.
I heard George's version on George Harrison first before I'd ever heard the Beatles one.
Oh,
So I had
wow.
a soft spot for it.
You know, edgy is a good thing, but the Beatles didn't fully develop Not Guilty when they were working on it. And you kept hearing that riff over and over and over, over and over. And you know,
Killer
I think
riff.
it was more developed as George did it, more laid back. Maybe it should have been a combination of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
I like what George did with it. Again, light jazzy feel. Not Guilty.
Mhm.
Maybe he's also let his inner driver with, you know, Faster, and just, you know, exploring parts of himself. I mean, he's celebrating, you know, I mean, Olivia on a few of the tracks, and there's, you know, soft-hearted and Hannah,
Yeah.
which is about holidays, what you enjoy with your family. So there's this. He has kind of remolded himself. He was in a wonderful spiritual plane. His father had recently passed away. His son had arrived, and he was now with his soulmate, which of course was Olivia, and she is still his soulmate. She very much is still the custodian of his estate, and she represents him on everything in life. And I think that's the album where he's introducing her to the narrative. She's now his Linda or his Yoko. He's never quite had a woman of that stature yet. Patty Boyd was wonderful, but she was always behind the scenes, and there's some dispute whether or not something is actually about her. It's some George was a bit thorny on that issue.
Yeah, George denied it in one issue. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
On the David Wig interviews, he sounded like maybe he thinks it was. You know, on that record, the David Wig interview.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I mean there are many reasons I love 33 and a third. I mean, another is I love how it explores R&B, and you know, you guys know how I feel about R&B. And I do think though it's also, as I said, it's as interesting as I've just always felt like they were like, you know, 33 and a third George Harrison were like, you know, they could have been like sequels, and that 33 and a third was kind of the beginning of this mature period, because I agree that you know that later part of the 70s was definitely, you hear it in the music, how he was reaching this more, you know, contented period of his life, not perfect, excuse me, but more you know, contented, as you said, becoming a father, marrying Olivia. I mean, you know, you definitely hear it from, say, Extra Texture, where I mean, to me, Tired of Midnight Blue says it all, like what he was going through at the time. I mean, you know, it's you know, it's an interesting you know, contrast. So but yeah, I mean, it as Ken said, it's interesting, you know, to hear different perspectives on these albums, you know, and fresh perspectives, and you know, how we hear, you know, we hear different albums in you know, in new ways. So it's great to hear them.
You know, we did a show on Talk More Talk on the greatest 1-2 punches.
Yeah.
And I think many of us made 33 and a third and George Harrison back to back.
Yes, we
Yeah.
did. That's right. Yep, we did. That's right. Yep. So yeah, love those albums. Any other questions that anybody wants to?
Well, there's
more.
just one thing I'll bring up if I can for a minute. And again, this is another John Lennon thing that I wanted to find out what you think. You were talking about when John, Paul, and George were going to sign the papers to dissolve the Beatles, and they're going to go to New York. And of course, we know John didn't go. He did it later on, you know, at a later time. But you said in the book, it says the two men, meaning Paul and George, the two men were humble enough to put their differences aside for the sake of their shared history. Together, McCartney and Harrison exemplified maturity, reverence, and respect, traits Lennon showed himself to be sorely lacking by virtue of his absence. Now, I can go along with that. I mean, I think maybe he should have been there, but here's where this is just for fun. I'm doing this. I'm asking you this question on a tangent now for fun. And along those lines, what do you think of Paul McCartney's non-show at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1988 for business reasons? He didn't show.
Deeply immature. It was a stupidity of the highest order. I mean, what was he thinking?
Yeah, so the same thing. I know this is a tit for tat kind of thing, but I was just wondering because I always thought, man, he really deprived himself out of a great time, a great experience, and I don't think there would have been anything hypocritical about it had he shown up.
No.
No.
I mean, I have been told by someone that it may have been because of Jan Wenner's presence at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that might have been the reason why Paul didn't show up at the event.
Oh.
But even if it's that's just petty. I mean, the world is clamoring for a Beatles reunion, and there are 3 of you here. Why not give it to them and just rock out to I Saw Her Standing There? It would have been amazing.
Yeah.
I agree.
Good. Yeah, do you notice a difference in I don't know how to word this, whatever, but do you think George is more comfortable being a contributor than a leader? You maybe kind of see a little difference in him with the concert for Bangladesh. I didn't get to see that. Ken, you got to see the Dark Horse tour. But I mean, do you think he's more comfortable being with a group of musicians than he is being out on his own?
I think his ideal idea of a band was the band, even though ironically they were Robbie Robertson's backing band. But that idea, Levon can sing one song and then Levon can play mandolin while Richard Manuel can sing this song, or Rick Danko can go for this instrument and sing harmony, and that they're all doing it for the betterment of the music. I think he tried to instill that with the traveling Wilburys, which is 5 guys, trying to promote their influences for the betterment of the music. And I think they got it pretty well in the first album, not so much in the second Traveling Wilburys, or is it the third Traveling Wilburys, shall we say?
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of a...
Yeah. I was going to say there's 2 sides to George there, because part of him wants to be part of a band.
Right.
Instead, at the time of the Traveling Wilburys, he found that to be more fun than to make a solo album.
Yeah.
So, he loved being in the Beatles, loved the camaraderie within the Beatles. He liked contributing in his own way within the Beatles. At the same time, he was frustrated not being acknowledged as much and not being given as many songs. So at the same time, he also wanted to put out solo music,
right.
But he still loved the idea of being in a band at the same time and doing solo stuff. But I think when the burden is not all on him, I think he appreciates that more.
Right.
That's why something like the concert for Bangladesh or the '74 tour, he had lots of friends on tour with him, and it wouldn't just be him. And even in the Live in Japan tour, he still had to rely on Eric Clapton's band, although songs. But Eric had a 4-song set in there. But there's 2 sides to him.
Right.
He is complex.
I mean, when you look at his album credits, I mean, you just see a treasure trove of musicians on these albums, and he just loved to surround himself with great musicians. And you would never see George doing a do-it-yourself album like McCartney would do from time to time, or a very kind of like stripped down album like maybe band or Estagono Band was. I mean, it's just always about the song. It's just interesting to think maybe what he could have done if it was just like him and maybe a percussionist or something like that.
Yeah. So he didn't want a Denny Lane. He wanted like a full band.
Right.
Also had a full band. So.
All right. Well, I think this is a great way to wrap this up. I really like how you phrased this, Owen. How you said kind of summarized his progression, George Harrison's progression, said, in a mere 10 years, he'd shown he was something much greater than the grumpy guitarist who had stormed out of rehearsals during the Beatles' proposed return to the stage. Instead, he fashioned a new image for himself, and one that was based entirely on the waves of time, considerate in his nature as both a musician and person. Completing the triumvirate was his role as a father, and he was happy to impart knowledge to the child who now holds the key to his life's work. He favored process over product and enjoyed watching the seeds grow into something grander, no matter how long lasting or influential the result was. I just I just love that. I just think that really shows his growth. And so one last question that I always ask authors: what do you want the reader to walk away with after reading this book?
Ooh, well, I hope to give an overview of him as a person. So my title for while I was writing it as a big Joyce fan is the portrait of the guitarist, a solo Beatle, rather instead of the portrait of the artist as a young man. So just see how he progressed, how he developed. What we haven't really mentioned is by the end of the 70s, he's one of the most promising film producers in Britain. He basically resurrected the British film industry, and he produces two of the British films in 1979. One is The Life of Brian, and the other is The Long Good Friday. And from then on, it falls into handmade films, and that's where he busies himself in the 80s, and that's probably his best work. It's producing all these amazing films like Mona Lisa with Nell and I, and it seemed to be that he was a man of his principles, and yes, occasionally they didn't work out, as we saw on the Dark Horse tour, or some of his songs weren't as good, but he stuck by his principles, and it helped him both as an artist and, more importantly, as a person. And if I
It's funny. You say that, Owen. I was gonna, believe it or not, I was gonna try to squeeze the question in and say, well, what about writing a book on the 80s of George? I'd like to see you try to make a claim for what I heard you had said before, that the handmade films was probably his greatest achievement in the 80s. I beg to differ, but there were a few good films in there. I still think the Cloud9, the Traveling Wilburys, and Cheer Down, and Poor Little Girl, and Cockamamie Business, those I for me were more, to me as a fan, I guess, more of a success.
But handmade films is an important part of his career, and particularly in British film, and I think that would be good. And of course, there is that documentary, Accidental Studio, which is really interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be an interesting book. And yeah, probably, as you said, for length, you could go into that's a book unto itself, right? So that would that may be a book of George Harrison in the 80s, and be able to get into because you could do Traveling Wilburys, Cloud9, Gone Troppo, and the films. So there you go.
And would you say that Gone Troppo? I think you did. So you listed the albums. Gone Troppo is probably your favorite album of the 80s from George?
Yeah. Yes. I don't think it's a masterpiece, but it's a bit more fun, and it's a bit more clear-headed. It's not as the other two albums.
And we did another listen episode on Gone Troppo, and we actually, we actually said it, was better than was initially given credit for sure.
Can we do another listen of Gone Troppo?
There you go.
I have another.
another
old
listen. There you go. But anyway, well, the book is George Harrison in the 1970s. And I think it's, as I said, an important look at this absolutely transformational decade in George Harrison's life, professionally and personally. Do check it out; it will inspire conversation. And again, it's just a really fascinating look at this crucial decade. So Owen, thank you so much for being with us, and I and yep, showing off some albums there. And I hope we weren't too too hard
Yeah.
on you with some of those.
I think I was pretty
those
gentle.
albums. Yes, you were. You were.
I had a lot of fun. Thank you, Owen, for playing along.
Thank you,
Being
Mr. Mayo.
game to answer the questions. I appreciate it.
You know, it really just and it inspires some great conversation, and we really enjoyed it, and definitely anytime you want to come back,
Okay.
we'd love it. Absolutely.
I'll keep it in my diary.
All right. Excellent. So this is the time where we, share where you can find us, anything that's coming up. So Owen, where can people find you, follow you, your appearances, your articles, all that stuff?
Oh God, that's a good one. Well, if you just type in my name into Muckrack, I'm probably best known for writing for Far Out magazine, but I'm on Twitter, and I have a WordPress. You can contact me on my WordPress.
All right, so just enter Owen Lyng and Google it, and you'll find it. And I can put any links you want in the description of the video. So just you can send me those, and I'll be happy to put those in. So great. Okay. So Tom, what's going on with you?
Well, let's see here. Well, Andy was just at the Fest for Beatles fans, as well as our own kid O'Toole, and I think Ken, you made a virtual appearance at the fest, didn't you? So Andy was posting all the panels that he was on our YouTube channel, Two Legs a Paul McCartney podcast. Right before this interview, we had a chat with author John Blaney, who's been writing the great the songs he was singing books, which is a great 4-volume set about all the releases and of Paul's catalog. And we may have convinced him to do a part 5. Hopefully that'll happen. But he also did a John version, of this. He did a George version as well. So great guy, good author, and we had a lot of fun talking with him. So that'll be up the following Saturday, or if you want to call it this Saturday, if you're one of those that think Sunday is the beginning of the week or not on the since it's on the calendar. So that's coming up, and we have an idea for shows with Owen here in the future as well. So be on the lookout for that. So more to come.
Excellent. All right, Joe, how about you? What's going on with your channel?
Well, my channel being Mean Mr. Mayo here on YouTube. If you want to subscribe, also I have a movie channel called Mayo After Dark. On the Mean Mr. Mayo channel, I did a new Beatles finds video. You got to go back a few videos, but some interesting stuff on there. And also I did a short video, just talking about this dubious news item that the artist known as Drake supposedly has beat the Beatles record again, or something like that, and why I think that's a lot of bogus nonsense and not on the same playing field. That's different posts, goal posts, not the same. So check it out.
All right, Ken, you always have a lot going on. So what update us? What are you up to?
Well, first of all, on my YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio, if you want to catch more of Owen, we had a conversation on the book prior to this. So if this is not enough for you, if you can't get your fill, check out Ken Michaels Radio. And in fact, a few weeks ago, we did another show defending We All Stand Together and Mary Had a Little Lamb. As 2 songs that are, kind of reviled by the press.
I listened to that show during my morning walk the other day, by the way.
Yeah.
I got a lot to say about that too.
Saw what you said about Mary Had a Little Lamb. Thank you, Joe. In addition to that, Dylan Seavey made another appearance on my channel. Dylan is just an incredible speaker when it comes to the Beatles. I came to know him through Two Legs, through Tom and Andy. And he did a Fab Five show in which he lists 5 albums, 1 Beatles, 1 from each solo Beatle. that are his go-to albums for today. Just his insights are fascinating. And as one person wrote in one of my shows with Dylan, boy, that guy can talk.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so he's the perfect person to
Yeah.
have occasionally if he's not at a loss for words.
No.
So, it's always interesting to hear. And there's another case. He's 30 years old. Owen's about to be 30. How do young people feel about the Beatles, the group, and the solo careers? You want to hear things from their perspective. And he's also a musician. He plays guitar and drums, and he hears things that a lot of us wouldn't hear, especially as a drummer. We did a whole show on Ringo too earlier. So that's on my YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio. Things we said today, my other podcast, we just did a show for Revolver. That's it just celebrated its 56th anniversary. And we will have another show coming next week where we're going to be talking about Lennon and McCartney, similarities and differences between the two of them, musically and as people. So that's on Things We Said Today, which you can catch on YouTube and all the audio outlets out there, just like you can with Talk More Talk. My website, kenmichaelsradio.com, always has weekly Beatles trivia, and now you can win a copy of the book, Lennon, the Mobster, and the Lawyer, by Jay Bergen, who was Lennon's defense attorney in that case against Morris Levy with the You Can't Catch Me, lifting a line from Chuck Berry's song, using it and Come Together, learned about everything that went on in the courtroom, including actual transcripts of what John said in the courtroom. And Jay has signed, well, not my copy. He signed the copies that I'm giving away on my website of this book. You can win that as part of my Beatles trivia at kenmichaelsradio.com. And as always, there's my radio show, Every Little Thing, which is on over 50 radio stations. Go to my website, look at the page for Every Little Thing. It lists all the radio stations, broadcast times, and where you can actually go to the websites for each station and stream the show. And I think that's everything. Did I get it all? Yes, I did.
All right. Well, first of all, let me just briefly mention where you can find us. You can find us, of course, right on this channel you're watching, and please subscribe. We have we're getting new subscribers every day. We thank you very much, and please tell your friends. We thank you all for your support. We couldn't do this show without you. You can, of course, find us on any podcasting platform you can think of. We're pretty much everywhere, so you can listen to us there. You can find us on Twitter at talkmoretalk1, the number 1. You can email us at talkmoresolotalk@gmail.com if you have any ideas about future topics you'd like us to consider. And of course, we always welcome feedback. You can also find us on Facebook. Just look up Talk More Talk. We're always posting, things we're up to, news, all kinds of fun stuff. And of course, you can find us on the web at talkmoretalk.com. Our friend Beatle Ed runs our shows on his site fab4radio.com. So do check him out, and thanks to him for all of his support. He's a great guy. As for what I'm up to, my classes are coming up very soon. Starting September 15th, I am teaching part 1 of my class, The Roots of Rock and Roll. I'm really excited about it. So spots are filling up fast, as I understand. So if you're going to sign up, you might want to do it now. So, you can sign up. I'll have the links up again on my Facebook page, on all the Talk More Talk Facebook page. Then part 2 doesn't start till December. But part 1 is starting up in just a few weeks. So I'm working on it as we speak. So, hope to see you there. And also our panel that we did at the Fest for Beatles fans, the special Whack Our Brains edition, will be up very soon. And some of the other panels that I was on there, you can check out actually on the Two Legs channel. And I think When They Was Fab will be up, and there will be some extra footage on this channel as well. So I've got some real editing to do. So be on the lookout for all of that stuff. And I think that's it. So let's see. Owen, you can unmute if you want. I didn't know if he wanted to say something. There you go. All right. So I think that's everything. So Owen, once again, thank you so much for being on the show. We really enjoyed this. This was a great conversation. So for Joe, Ken, Tom, and Owen, this is Kid O'Toole saying, it's all up to what you value, down to where you are. Peace and love, everybody.
Take care.
Here.
Bye.